What's up, everybody?
How we doing?
So exciting to be here. Thank you so much for being here. We have some exciting stuff to show you.
Yeah. How many of y'all are here from out of town? All right.
Wow.
All right. How about from outside of this country? Wow. Amazing. Well, I'm so glad.
For the live stream, that's about like 50, 60% of people here. Amazing.
Yeah. I'm so glad y'all could make it. We have some really fun stuff coming up, so excited everyone could be here.
Also, it happens to be a new year in Ethiopia and Eritrea, so for those watching from there, Happy New Year. And before we get into it, I want to share a quick video here. I'm going to play this from a different keynote. A speaker far more accomplished than we are, but it was computer science department head at MIT. This is a speech from 1999. Over 25 years ago. It was the 35th anniversary of the lab of computer science there, and it's just an amazing talk. I want to play the clip for you. It kind of sets the tone for the rest of the talk, and we'll be right back. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no reason we can't talk about the future while having a little fun. So let me recollect something for you. Last year, a few of my colleagues and I were heading to Taiwan. The flight, as you know, is very long, and in the airplane, I was trying to make something work. Now, that something was a laptop, brand new laptop, the latest. It was running Windows. And a little card on which you download your software, you download your addresses, you download your calendar, and then you take the card in your pocket. I had been at it for 3 hours. And my problem was that when the card software was happy, the operating system wasn't, and vice versa, as you well know. So we're in the plane, so I turn to one of my colleagues, and I say, Tim, would you please help me? Well, Tim Berners-Lee is a very gracious man. So he said, of course. He said, I think I can help you. So he picked up the machine. An hour and a half later, he hands it back to me, still very polite, still very British, says, I'm sorry, I can't make this thing work. So I turn to my friend and associate director, Ron Rivest, and I say, the inventor of the web couldn't do it. How about you, inventor of RSA? And Ron, with his characteristic wisdom, looked at me and said, no, Mike, thanks. And then the youngest member of our delegation, whose name I shall not mention to protect the innocent, jumped up and he says to me, you guys are a bunch of old fogies. Let me show you. Good LCS attitude. 2 hours later, he hands it to me with expletives surrounding this. I went to my seat and I did what every expert does. I tried the various wizards and lizards that were coming up at me, and I kept typing at random things in the fields until finally 3 hours later, it worked. Total elapsed time, 9 hours. Good point for those who make batteries. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why do I bring this up? Our field is young, so I don't bring it up to complain so much. This is to be expected. But we are at a junction. What I experienced with that example is typical of what we have done for the last 40 years with our field. We have focused on designing for machines. We put little envelopes. We call them operating systems. We call them browsers. We call them network software. And then we throw all this stuff at the user. Now, the image that this evokes to me is a user, you, sitting in your car, a car that's very early vintage, and you got rings in every finger. And on every ring is attached a wire. And you got a wire for fuel mixture, you got another wire for advance of the ignition, you got another one for the valve clearances, the brakes, and this and that. And you're sitting there with all these wires, and we say to you, go from Boston to New York. Ladies and gentlemen, this must stop.
So, by the way, this is a video that does not like have millions of views. It's 900 views on YouTube, so it's a deep cut. You're welcome. But I love it because it tells you about the importance of the user experience in a very relatable way. I love that example of the fingers controlling a car. And if you look at the experience of building apps today, and how many people here have actually written code to ship apps? Okay, about half of the people in the crowd. So I'll tell you a personal story. I think Alex and I and another co-founder of ours from our last startup, we'd been building an app. This was like maybe like 9 a.m. I started my day at a public library. This is pre-COVID, still working out of coffee shops and libraries. And I wanted to launch a feature. So I was building a screen. I think it took me maybe an hour. So pre-FlutterFlow days. And I tried to run it, and it wouldn't start. The phone would just restart. As soon as I hit run, the phone restarts. OK, I'll wizards and lizards, try different things, operating system version, check the phone version. Eventually, like 4 hours later, I realized if you turn off the Wi-Fi, just because of the version of the framework and the phone and the operating system, that's actually a bug. If you turn off Wi-Fi, it works. So OK, no problem. It reported to GitHub, answered the Stack Overflow question, move on with life. And it didn't really hit me that I shouldn't be spending 4 or 5 hours not working on the product. And that's why we exist. Our goal is so that building products feels like that you're sitting in a place that looks beautiful, you're having a good time, you're working on the product to serve your customers. That's what we're about, and that's why we do this. Yeah. And Alex will tell you about the journey so far.
So I just want to tell you all a little bit about our journey. So for those who don't know, we got started in November of 2020, posting about FlutterFlow to a Flutter community page with nothing but a landing page. So we were definitely a no-code company, because at the time, we had written literally no code. But somehow, we woke up to over 800 signups on our waiting list. And that was the first time we knew that we were really building something that people truly wanted. So we spent the next month, which we called No Sleep November, building out, working hard to build our very first product and inviting our very first brave souls to try it, some of whom have since forgiven us for this initial experience. But luckily, our early users were extremely patient as we built fast and broke things, and some even went above and beyond in giving us incredibly passionate and detailed feedback that allowed our product to advance. We've also had the good fortune of having the support of the Flutter team throughout, and even launched publicly in May 2021 on Flutter's Google I/O keynote. So I want to give a huge thank you to the Flutter team and the amazing Flutter community for everything they've done and all the hard work that they've done. Now, in the subsequent 2 years, we've continued to advance the product and have even started working with larger and larger companies to help build their user-facing applications, showing that both individual developers, freelancers, and major corporations all face the same challenges when it comes to application development. Now, flash forward to the present. We now have over 750,000 builders building on FlutterFlow, who have collectively generated over 1 billion lines of Flutter code. On top of that, over 12,000 FlutterFlow applications have been deployed to the app stores directly from FlutterFlow. But more important than any of these numbers is you all. Our amazing, passionate community is what truly makes FlutterFlow, FlutterFlow. And you guys inspire us to improve every single day. So I want to thank each and every one of you, whether you're here in person or watching at home, for being with us on this journey.
And our promise to you is that we're going to work as hard as we can to deliver you a platform that you deserve. Because we want to change the world, but it's actually not us who can do it, because you're the ones who are doing the real work out there. It's the founders that are building a diabetes management app, to the freelancers that are building an app for their local business, or the developers that are driving transformation in their companies. You're the ones we want to support, and we're going to cheer you on as much as we can. And it's a privilege to be able to do that for you. Speaking of working hard, We actually have the Flutter Flow team here who works hard every day to deliver this platform for you. So if you please stand up, Flutter Flow team here. There's also some in the back, some joining us live.
This part was not planned. Yeah, so speaking of hard work, we're excited to announce today a new release of FlutterFlow 4.0. So for this feature launch, we wanted to improve on what we do best, which is making application development easier, 10 times faster, and ultimately resulting in higher quality applications. So you've seen the features, but let's do some live demos. All right. So for our first feature, I'll give some context. So in the last year, we've made some recent advances to Flutter Flow to allow teams to collaborate in real time on the same project. However, as some of our larger users know, when you have multiple people working in the same project, changing all kinds of things, touching different parts of the project, you can start to step on people's toes a little bit. Makes it a little bit more challenging to test and to build. However, you'll notice that this doesn't actually apply in the normal traditional development cycle, right? And why is that? It's because typically, as a developer, you check out your own branch, isolate it from everyone else in your own peaceful environment, make all the changes that you want, and at the very end, merge them back in. And that is the exact functionality that we wanted to emulate directly in Flutter Flow. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Victoria to the stage to give us a sneak peek of this in action.
All right, there we go. Let's get started with branching. So over here, I have started a project with my teammate Takashi. What we're looking at right now is the stable version of the project, or the main branch. And on top of that, Takashi and I have separately developed our own updates to this app on our own separate branches. Let's say that Takashi has already finished making his changes and has already pushed his branch into the main branch. So now all that's left to do is for me to also merge in my changes. So I'm going to do that by pressing the merge button over there. So when I merge a branch into the main branch, all of the non-conflicting changes will automatically be applied to the new version of the project. However, like Alex said, it could be hard for us to not overlap and step on each other's toes. And for those conflicting changes, Flutter Flow should detect them and prompt us to handle them, which is what we have over here, a summary of all of our conflicts. Now let's take a closer look. So over here, we have a conflict on our onboarding page. So if we take a look here, this is what the project initially looked like before I created my branches. Here is the change I made, and here is Takashi's change. For this one, I actually like Takashi's change more, so I'm going to select that one. But for the actions, let's see. Over here, I'm navigating to the timer page while Takashi's navigating to some other page. I like mine more, so gonna accept my changes this time. And as you can see, the number of errors were reduced, and we have this here just to make sure that your project did not break during this merge process. And of course, you also have access to your other tools that you use during normal development, such as preview mode, run mode, and downloading your code. Again, just to make sure that nothing is breaking while you're merging your branches. Yeah, so let me just go through this project. And I see here that it looks like Takashi made a typo. So let me just get that fixed for him. And once I'm happy with everything, I can merge in my changes. So when I merge in my branch into the main branch, what's going to happen is both the main branch and my branch will be updated to look like what we previously saw under accepted changes. So let's just verify that that actually worked. So I have Takashi's change right here, which I accepted. And over here, I have my action, and let's make sure the typo has also been fixed. And yeah, let's just refresh this page just to make sure it's up to date. And while we're waiting for that, we can also look here to see the history of all the updates we've made to branches and merges. So here's the latest one that I just made a moment ago, merging my branch into main. And yeah, so here we have the main branch again. Workouts, timer, and yeah, the typo's been fixed here too. All right, so that's it for branching.
All right, thank you, Victoria. And by the way, everyone here presenting these features actually built them. So another big thank you to Victoria, not just for presenting, but for also building this amazing feature. All right, so for this next feature, let's do some audience participation here. Okay, so how many people here care about maintaining the quality of their app over time? All right, and how many have 100% test coverage over their entire app right now? Right, so we see the disconnect. All right, and that is because, quite frankly, building tests is a bit of a pain. And very few of us enjoy doing it. But at the same time, it's a very crucial part of the development cycle. And which is why we've introduced our most recent feature, testing, directly within FlutterFlow. And Anton is going to come up and give us a preview of that as well.
Not showing here. Okay. Hey. Hi, everyone. I'm Anton. I'll show you how to create automated tests for your FlutterFlow projects. So here I have a social network app. Let's create a test that users can sign in with their emails and passwords. I start by opening the testing tab, and I start a new test. I give it a name, say login test, and a description. Sign in with email and password. Now I need to add test tabs. As my first step, I wait for the app to load. Then I need to enter the email. I choose Interact with Widgets tab, type enter text, and I select the widget directly from the UI builder. Here's my email field. And I enter the email of my test user. Test at. Then I do the same exact thing for the password. Interact with widget, enter text from UI builder, password, and enter my test password. Now I need to tap login, interact with widget, tap UI builder, login, confirm. After that, I need to verify that it landed on the correct page. I first wait for the previous steps to finish, because loading a page takes time. And I confirm that I'm on the right page by checking that a certain text that I know must exist on that page is actually present on the page. Expect result. I will find it by text, because I'll go check this out. It's a title of a post on my social network that I know exists. Finds widgets. And that's my test. Now, when I download the code for the project, it will also generate the test code. And I can run this on my device, or I can integrate it with any CI/CD tool. Let's see this in action. So, okay, sorry. All right, you see it enter in email, password, type in login, waiting for the page to load. Takes time, it's an emulator. And now it will check that this text is present on the page. Ta-da, it finished successfully. And that's how you create automated tests for your Flutter Flow projects. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Anton. All right, so for our next feature, this is something that a lot of users have asked us about. So as you know, we integrate pretty tightly with Firebase, but at the same time, our users have to go off-platform currently to take full advantage of the very powerful Firebase cloud functions. So no longer do they have to do so. And without further ado, I would like to invite our Chief Executive Intern, Takashi Shu, to the stage to show us this.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Takashi, the Chief Executive Intern, and I'd like to present Cloud Functions in FlutterFlow. So here I have an app to calculate my 1 rep max on the bench press. So here it says 315 for 3 repetitions. I'm not that strong, but let's move on. So here I've created a data type called exercise, and we have the name, the weight, and the number of repetitions here. Now, if I navigate to the Cloud Functions page, I can add a new Cloud function, and I'll call this Ask GPT Demo. And we'll set a return value of string in order to get the response from ChatGPT. And the input we'll call input exercise. And that will take variable of type data type, which is exercise here. And then, so I've created the code already, and I'll just paste this here. Let's fix these real quick. Sorry about that. And now we can save this Cloud function and then hit deploy to start the deployment process. And we also have a package.json editor to add whatever packages you may need. And so let's begin building with our new Cloud function. So if we go into the action flow editor, let's create an action. Now we have the option to select Cloud function. So we'll take Ask GPT Demo. And if it succeeds, let's just add a snack bar. And we can have the snack bar say success. And then since we're passing in an input parameter into our Cloud function, we can set it directly from FlutterFlow. So here I've created a custom function earlier called create exercise, which basically creates one of the exercise data types as shown earlier. And once this whole deployment process is complete, you should get this deploy dialog. And I've deployed this beforehand just to hide the API key and stuff like that. And now, if we have this app from earlier, if I press this button, we can wait to get the response. And now we have our response displayed from our Cloud function in our app. Thank you.
All right, thanks, boss. All right, so it's time for a little bit more audience participation. All right, so how many of you have gone through the process of generating screenshots for either the App Store or the Play Store? All right, that's a lot of you. Now, how many of you have managed to maintain a single shred of joy after that process? Okay, far fewer. Well, that's exactly why we wanted to add that functionality directly into FlutterFlow. And to show this off, I would like to invite Shovik up to the stage to give us a little demo.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone. I am Shovik, and I am going to give you a brief demo of the screenshot generator in action. So here we are inside a Flutter Flow project called Threads. And as you can see, there are a number of variables and stuff that are coming from the backend. So we are not ready to generate a screenshot directly on the builder. But fear not, in Flutter Flow 4.0, you have a chance of getting your screens ready for any screenshot generation. So I will just demo that to you now. So you have to just head over to the preview mode. And now once you go to the preview mode, you will have a button for going into the screenshot mode over here. And as you can see, the UI immediately update into a nice one. It's because I have already set up some screenshot values on this page. So I will just demo that to you now, how you can set your screenshot values. So you can just head over to any widget that has a variable, and you can just click on it, and it should bring up a dialog from where you can insert the screenshot mode value. So I will just enter a name here. And hit confirm. It will just update the UI over here. And similarly, I will also update the username. And similarly, you can also update the images. So for images, we have the same dialog, but you can either provide an image URL over here, or you can choose an Unsplash image. So if you hit this search button, it should bring up an Unsplash dialog. And I will search for mountains because that's what the post about. And maybe I can do this one. I will just hit confirm, and it will update on the UI. And the screen is looking pretty good for a screenshot. So once you're ready to generate your screenshot, you can head over to the arrow button over here. And once you click that, it will bring up a small panel. So here you will have toggles for whether you want to generate for Android, iOS, or for both. And you can just hit generate screenshot, and it should generate the screenshot for the particular page we have over here. And it should be for all device sizes that we need for publishing to App Store or Play Store. But before we do that, I want to show one more thing. So if we head over to the all pages view, here we can select multiple pages that we want to generate the screenshot for. So I'll just select the home page and the post details page. And I will again head back to that same panel, but this time I will toggle on the capture selected pages. And I'll just hit generate screenshot. And it should go over and generate the screenshots for both the pages, and it should be for all the recommended device sizes that we need for App Store or Play Store publishing. Let's wait for a couple of seconds for it to complete. Once the screenshots are generated, you will see the same dialog popping up over here, but you will now see all the screenshots are now over here. And you can just hit download screenshots, and it will save those screenshots on your device. So I will just go, you will have it as a zip file, so I will just open the zip. I will go inside this, and you will find it nicely structured as per the screen sizes, and you will find all your screenshots over here. Yeah, there you have it, screenshot generator in Flutter Flow 4.0. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Shovik. So one other thing we wanted to, of course, announce, as you saw earlier, is FlutterFlow for iPad. So we don't have a demo for it, but because it's really just FlutterFlow on the iPad. But this is something we're really excited about, and as far as we know, is the first application where you can build and deploy iOS, Android, and web applications directly to the app stores.
From the iPad, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So I hope, by the way, all the demos went fine. Live demos. I was sweating back there, but whew, so great job to everyone. But we thought, I hope you're excited about these features, but we thought we need to do something more. So we actually have one more thing we want to show you. If you've seen some of our AI assist features and tried it out, we know there's a lot of stuff to improve, but we're doing some work on that, and we wanted to do a video that shows you what we've been working on.
Call me up.
So at Flutter Flow, we believe AI should not replace you. It should help you do your best work. And that's why we think every app building hero needs a sidekick, and we're hoping this will be that for you. And you can have information about your project, any debug mode failures it may have had, compilers, all that stuff, which you can optionally turn off if you don't want to send it to the server. But that's what we want to enable. This should be launching in private beta next week. That's it.
All right. So next, we're going to go on a quick 15-minute break. But for those here, we actually have some iPads set up in the break room for people to try it out. For those watching at home, you'll have to wait until our official release. But yeah. All right.
this is Mama's troll for the book.
Hi everyone, my name is Tochku Charles Akano.
Docente, y con Flutter Flow creé una aplicación que se llama Savvy. Es una aplicación educativa que sirve para gestionar cuestionarios autocalificables.
We have achieved a milestone in FlutterFlow that we have created a smart WhatsApp only in FlutterFlow.
Create this speech app e WhatsApp app and many other apps that I can't count.
Hoje, tornei minha ideia em um negócio. Já desenvolvi projetos para diversos países.
Helps me sell because I can build working demos as part of our proposals, which impresses potential clients.
Vengo de un país, Venezuela, en donde las oportunidades son muy limitadas, haciendo lo que me gusta y esto me da la oportunidad de ayudar a mi familia que siempre he estado apoyando.
As a student, I wanted to make a great app that could define my creative skills. And with the boom of AI and no-code tools, it was a no-brainer.
Personalmente he descubierto cómo abordar las cosas de manera diferente gracias a FlutterFlow, ya que encontré libertad, capacidad y eficiencia en esta herramienta. Desde ese momento mi vida profesional ha tomado un giro hacia un mundo en el que todo es posible.
I'm not a true coder, I'm more like a product designer. With FlutterFlow, I became a full app studio.
FlutterFlow ha revolucionado nuestra forma de desarrollar aplicaciones al permitirnos centrarnos en la creatividad y la innovación.
Two projects, we need a larger number of senior developers. With FlutterFlow, for most projects we only need one FlutterFlow developer and one Flutter developer.
En una aplicación educativa totalmente funcional en una sola tarde. Eso me salió la FlutterFlow.
I'm really excited about creating stunning, highly functional interfaces.
For me, FlutterFlow has just been fun, and sometimes, work isn't fun, and sometimes programming can be really frustrating, and designing can also sometimes be kind of frustrating.
I'm constantly impressed by the community's warmth and willingness to assist each other.
I say if you can dream it, you can build it in FlutterFlow. Bienvenidos a la nueva era de la programación.
Today, you can develop a professional project for multiple platforms like Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac OS, in a coffee shop, while traveling, or even in the Amazon jungle.
So that was Paulo Morales in the Amazon building on FlutterFlow. And that circulated quite quickly in our Slack group when that first went out. So we had to give him a special community shout out because we never expected that. And we definitely, we're definitely gonna be funding some missions to Everest next year to build with FlutterFlow. So if anyone's interested, please let us know. But regardless, those stories you just witnessed, they aren't just testimonials. And our user base isn't just numbers. It's definitely the heartbeat of our community.
It's the late night Eureka comment of a developer building the feature in 3 days instead of weeks. That's so sorry.
Oh. Pause.
It's just.
Okay, 3 days instead of weeks. And it's definitely the individuals on our community forum who are consistently advocating for FlutterFlow and helping each and every one of us make our lives much easier.
And it's those heartwarming gatherings where a few of you share FlutterFlow tips and tricks over a warm cup of coffee.
And let's not forget about our community educators, the individuals on YouTube who are always making videos for us and always solving our problems to fix all of our knowledge gaps and helping out new builders.
Our community has in total built 2,500 plus videos on YouTube, not just in English, but other languages like Japanese, Russian, French, Hindi, and also contributed to 140 plus marketplace items, which are like community created widgets, plugins, templates that ease your Flutter Flow development.
And a lot of them have been extremely consistent throughout the year, which is why we decided to launch the Flutter Flow Ambassador Program earlier this year and selected 16 individuals who have been contributing to our Flutter Flow community for such a long time.
We currently have ambassadors from Brazil, Bulgaria, Ecuador, France,
India, Nigeria, Russia, the UK, and we're definitely looking for more ambassadors in the future as well.
These ambassadors have since achieved remarkable feats, be it building Flutter Flow apps in the heart of Amazon forest,
or even educating 5,000 African students in 3 months.
And of course, we recently launched our community forum, which had like 20K users in just a few days. So thank you for being part of our community and family and making this a fun place to be.
And as a thank you note, we're so excited now to finally give out our first ever Builder Awards for all the amazing work that has been done over the course of the year. So first up, I'd like to welcome on John to the stage to present our Educators of the Year Award.
Thanks, Pooja and Aman. Well, my name is John, and I'm the head of education at FlutterFlow. And in this video, I'm sorry, that's not right. And in this award, I'm going to be presenting the Community Educators of the Year. So our community educators are a central and critical part of our community. It takes so much work and skill and effort to be able to simplify and to communicate this robust app very simply and clearly. So we want to recognize these amazing educators from our community. So the winners of the FlutterFlow Educators of the Year are Mateus Castello, Steve Salmon at Digital Pro, James No Code, Paulo Morales, of course, Jorge Valdez Sincodio, and Paul No Code. Thank you so much, guys. You did an amazing, amazing job this year. We can't wait to see what the community has in this next coming year. Thanks so much. We're going to welcome back Pooja and Aman for the champions in our community.
Thank you, John. So the next award we have is Community Champions of the Year. And this is a very exciting award for us because these are individuals who have contributed on the community forums, answered questions to all your questions that you had about Flutter Flow, and also shared tips and tricks on social platforms. So these are Community Champions of the Year. We have Sergey Middendorf, Dimitar Klaturov, Karol Ghost, Hideyuki Yamada, also known as Idea Garage, and last but not the least, Justin from Nimble. Next up, we have our next interesting award, which is the App Design of the Year, and we would like to have Andrew on stage to present that.
Thank you. Ready this one? Ooh, okay. Nice. Thank you so much, Pooja. Ooh. Hey guys, my name is Andrew. I'm the head of design at FlutterFlow. And the thing I love about FlutterFlow is that it gives you the ability to create anything you want and produce an actual application. You see, in design, okay, cool, I haven't touched that. In design, it's always been a struggle. you design something beautiful, you add some interactions, maybe some animations, you try to get a unique user experience, and then you pass it off, and then you realize like those things are really hard to implement. And developers are doing a number of things from front end to back end to logic that you can't do as a designer. So you just trust them to do it. Flutter Flow gives you the ability to help your developers out from a design perspective, because this is the design of the year. All right. So that's the amazing thing about Flutter Flow and why I love that we get to work and empower communities. We get to democratize development. I find myself at the forefront, like I benefit the most from that as a designer, in my opinion. I love it. Now, this app design of the year is a perfect example of what I was just saying. This team developed an app. They designed it as well, right, in Figma, but they didn't want to just utilize a static prototype to test their product. They actually wanted to use a dynamic prototype to test their product, get feedback from users, and move forward with trying to find their product market fit. This team is a team of 3 students that have done an amazing job of implementing some pretty incredible design solutions within their application. So the app design of the year, if I can do this right, I hope I get this process done, is Gifted Social. And we have an award for them. Now, these screenshots actually don't do it justice. When you actually interact with the application, it's not only a beautifully designed app, it's a very robust product. They implemented Shopify API into their application that links to a variety of stores on Shopify where you can actually create lists from those stores for yourself, send it to friends, and they could purchase a gift for you on your birthday. I think it's amazing. I think it's a brilliant idea, beautifully implemented, and incredible that they could do that all within a few months in Flutter Flow. I put up a quote there from the team because they wanted to utilize a platform where they could actually push a real product out and get actual feedback. So I want to say congratulations to the Gifted Social team. You guys are awesome. I'll deliver this to you myself. I think you guys are in Europe, so I'll just book a flight over there. Abel, you guys said I could expense that, right? Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I want to pass it back off to Aman after we see this sort of interaction of the actual application. This is a small piece. They have an open beta. They integrate with AI, where you can actually chat with AI about the gifts that you want, and then your friends can chat with AI to see what they want to get you. Which is, if you have any more than 2 friends, like I do, like I have 2. So like it's still hard to sort of keep track of what they want for their birthday or Christmas without actually asking them. So this is a perfect application for most people. Thank you so much. Aman.
Oh, here, dude. I got one. Okay. Oh, wait, let me get the clicker. Yeah, we had issues with this last time. All right. Okay. Now it is time for App of the Year. And this one's special. This one's very special, obviously. And we're going to need to do a drum roll because otherwise it's not exciting. But wait. I've got it. I prepped something, you know. I'm kidding. We had so many amazing submissions for App of the Year, so it was extremely difficult to choose just one. But we thought that the App of the Year should really represent the spirit of Flutter Flow. So for this, we decided to choose an app that really created a unique experience for their users, utilized the powerful integration of Flutter Flow and Firebase to scale to over 250,000 users, and they're currently growing, and one that built complex features with both Flutter Flow native integrations as well as custom code. So I'm excited to award the App of the Year to, drum roll please, AB Money. And we have a video as well that you can also roll. So AB Money is a lifestyle meditation app that was built by an agency in the Czech Republic called Appful.pro. And it was built for a creator named Sasha Belair. It hit #1 in the education category in Eastern Europe on the App Store, and with a 4.8 rating on the App Store and a 5.0 rating on the Google Play Store, and reported over $100,000 of revenue generated for their client, and obviously over 250,000 plus users for their application. So we'll be shipping out these beautiful prizes, these beautiful awards, I should say, to all those individuals that we've awarded in this section. And we'll also be sending out the prizes that we promised, such as the iPad Pro and other special gear. So look out for that in your mailbox soon. So once again, thank you so much for everyone who submitted for this section. We had so many amazing submissions, it was very hard to choose. All of our educators, our champions, the app design of the year, the people who submitted, we could not build different without you. So we really want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts to you guys and everyone here. That concludes the end of this section. We're going to go ahead and jump into a short break now, but stick around because right after this, we'll be getting into our guest speakers. Leah Jarrett from the Flutter team is here, as well as Darian to do a Q&A with Abel. So those two sections should be extremely exciting, and we'll see you guys here in a little bit. Thank you so much.
name is Prashanta Roy. I am the Group Chief Technology Officer of Team Protect Berhad. Berhad is a licensed insurer in Malaysia and Thailand. GCP was one of our partners. They introduced us to FlutterFlow, saying that why don't you try it out. We did a POC. We were very convinced that this is the right choice for us. Everybody complains, how do we make distribution more easier? FlutterFlow fills that gap. Since it's supposed cross-platform technology, we can give a app which is ready for the mobile or tab, and it can go to any broker or B2B business or a B2B2C business end user. We wanted one technology which can solve both the problems. So this is where FlutterFlow comes in. I build it once and deploy it many times across channels.
I'm Suyog Shetty. I'm the CEO and the co-founder at Nivea Solutions. We are a premier Google Cloud partner in India and helping customers in their digital transformation. A couple of ways in which FlutterFlow is helping us accelerate the whole delivery process. The first is the whole prototyping and visualizing the whole experience layer itself. I think today we don't have to reach out to a different tool to do that or a different set of engineers. Within the same platform, we've been able to kind of prototype it and show the whole experience to a customer. Second, I think when you're building multiple applications within for a customer, it allows us to kind of build components, right? Reusable components, which allows us to probably accelerate the subsequent development, at a much faster pace. Third, the overall development itself in FlutterFlow is much faster, compared to doing it in a traditional technologies like React and Flutter, right? So these are probably the top 3 areas which is helping us accelerate the development using the platform for our customers.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Leah, and I'm a product manager for Flutter on the Google team. So I work on the core Flutter framework, which is what powers Flutter Flow. And I'm so excited to be here in New York, my hometown. I live just across the bridge over in Brooklyn. And we rarely have developer events in New York, so it's really exciting to see everyone here today. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Flutter. Like I said, Flutter is the framework that powers Flutter Flow, not just the apps that come out of Flutter Flow, but the Flutter Flow app itself. And on Flutter, I work on a couple of different things, but mostly I pay attention to the Apple ecosystem and UX design. So you can imagine, I was really excited when I saw the iPad app for Flutter Flow. Not just because it uses an Apple operating system, but because I know that UX designers love a chance to pull out their fancy Apple pencils and edit all that stuff. So I'm really excited to see what you all build with it. And I have to take a little bit of credit because I was talking to the FlutterFlow team before, and they were talking about how quickly they were able to deploy to iPad, and that's all thanks to the Flutter framework. Okay, so if you're familiar with Flutter or if you've seen our talks before, you know that we tie everything back to these core pillars. The first one is that when we're designing Flutter, we want it to enable developers to build beautiful digital experiences. And we need these experiences to be fast and performant on all different devices. Sorry. All good? Yeah, so we need them to be fast and performant so that they're usable by the consumers. And we also want our developers to be happy and productive. We want using Flutter to be an enjoyable experience. Finally, we know that Flutter is portable. We want apps that are built with Flutter to run on all different devices. So with Flutter, you have a single code base, but you can deploy to iOS, to Android, to web and desktop, and more. And again, that's why they were able to build out that iPad app so quickly. Finally, Flutter itself is completely open source. So you can inspect every line of code in GitHub, you can fork it, you can make changes, you can open up pull requests. So it's led to this wonderful, vibrant community of lots of contributors. So it's a really exciting time to be working on Flutter or Flutter Flow. We recently announced at Google I/O that there are now over 1 million apps in production that have been built with Flutter. And there are over 5 million developers who have used Flutter. Woo! And Stack Overflow releases an annual developer survey. And this year on their survey, Flutter was ahead of all of the other UI frameworks. So definitely take a look and dig into the details. OK, so we just watched that great video about Flutter Flow for enterprises. And at Google, I talk to enterprise developers quite a bit. Often, they're starting to build a new app, or maybe they're redesigning an existing app. And usually, one of the first places they start is in a Figma file. They have a design system, and they want to create a library of UI components. Not only does this library help them move faster, because they can pull in individual components when they're developing new features, but the designers love it because it ensures brand consistency across all their experiences. So I might be a little bit biased, but I think Flutter is a really great tool for building out these UI component libraries. And I'll tell you why. It's mostly because of Flutter's innovative architecture. So there are a lot of UI frameworks out there. There are kind of like the system UI frameworks, and then there are the cross-platform UI frameworks. But Flutter's architecture is really innovative in this space. Of course, like we mentioned before, you can deploy your app from a single code base to multiple platforms. But what's really special is that the Flutter engine actually talks directly to low-level rendering APIs on the devices you use. So these are like the Metal APIs on Apple's devices. Not only does this give us a great performance, like we talked about before, but it also gives developers a blank canvas. Whoops, text got a little weird there. But it gives you a blank canvas to bring your designs to life. And a great example of this is the Wondrous app, which is available on the macOS App Store, the iOS App Store, and the Android Play Store. So you can give it a try. OK, so that was the Flutter engine, but the Flutter framework itself also helps developers build out these UI components. The Flutter framework is declarative, which means that it's really easy to read and write and to learn. You basically declare what you want the UI to say, and then Flutter takes care of the rest. Flutter is also composable. So if you've played around with Flutter, you've probably seen that everything is a widget. And widgets are themselves often composed of other widgets. So you have this sort of Russian doll effect where you're nesting different components. And now when you're building out your library of UI components, you have a whole wide range of options inside the Flutter framework. You could go really low level and use something like custom paint, where you define custom painters to actually paint pixels onto the screen. So that's what I use to create this custom line chart that I have here. Or you can look at our design libraries. So we have 2 design libraries in the framework and many more on pub.dev. In the framework itself, we have Material, which was recently updated to Material 3 to feature the latest and greatest from all the Google design systems. And then we also have Cupertino, which matches Apple's design systems so that you can create apps that feel right at home on Apple devices. And the really cool part about Flutter Flow is that you get all that Flutter goodness plus more, because you have this visual editor that you can use to easily build apps. So you can go faster and collaborate better. So I'm really excited to be here today because I'm really interested in the design to code space. Again, back to this whole enterprise thing. Enterprise developers often start with a Figma file, right? Your designer will hit you up on chat and send you a link to the latest Figma mockup. and maybe your job is to try to translate that into code. But anyone who's done this knows that it can sometimes be a time-consuming process, and things update and change, and you have to change it in multiple places. So let's talk a little bit about what actually goes on in the Figma file itself. Like Flutter, design systems are often composable. You start off at a pretty low level working with text styles, which is composed of different typographies and font sizes. And then you have your brand colors, which are often just hex values. And you use these fundamental style components to create larger UI components. So in this case, I have 2 different versions of a card that I'm going to use in my app. And like I said before, translating these design systems into code can be time-consuming. So I'm really interested in this space, and that's why I'm here today, because I think Flutter Flow is a really great opportunity to try to bridge the gap between designers and developers. So I'm going to attempt to do a live demo. Actually, I have one more slide, sorry. One thing that I think was really cool when I was playing around with Flutter Flow over the past couple weeks was that in the enterprise app, I could simply connect my Figma file. So I found this button right away, and I connected my Figma file, and I was able to grab those text styles and those color styles that I showed, and now those are available to use in various parts of the Flutter Flow application. So super cool. I know it's not one of the fancy brand new Flutter Flow features, but I was pretty impressed by this. OK, now I want to cut over to my laptop for a second. I'll just log in. OK. Cool. All right, and like I said, I'm not a Flutter Flow expert. I work at the Google team. I've rarely touched Flutter Flow, but I think this is a real testament to how easy it is to jump in and start building. So I have my Figma file over here, which, like I said before, has all my different text styles and color styles. I've already connected this to Flutter Flow, so these are now available to me inside my design system. And I want to just quickly start to create this card component. So first, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click Create a New Component, and I can go to Card Views. And like I said before, we're building on top of the Flutter greatness. So many of these components are just widgets that come available in the framework itself, or the Flutter Flow team has built on top of the framework to create even more widgets for you. So I'll use my theme, and let me give this a name. Create this. Let's make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. And now I'm going to come over here, and I have all my text styles available from my Figma file. So I can change it to, let's say, headline large, and then I'm going to change this to title large. And I can go ahead and add a border like we had in our Figma file. So I'll make this a border width of 2. And here you can see all my different colors from my design system. So I'll add that in. Now I have my border. And finally, I want to add a component that I've already created. Because like we said before, design systems are composable. So I have this seasons component. I'm just going to drag and drop it. And let's play around with the layout for a second. Let's change the spacing here so that we space between. And now we're all set. So I made a lot of progress on translating from Figma to Flutter in just, I don't know, 30 seconds. How long was that? Yeah. And what's great is this is all, in my component library. Now I can use it in other places in my app. So let me come over to my home page where I started. And now I can go and find all the components I've created. So I'll just drag and drop this one wherever I need it in my app. And I think I forgot to put a column widget, so it's a little funky. But yeah, it's super easy to get started and just go from, whoop. That's all right, we can go back to the slides. And it's super easy to go from Figma to Flutter Flow. And I think this is super exciting because this is a space that's evolving rapidly. So I'm really excited to see designers start to get into Flutter Flow themselves and bridge this gap. That's basically all I had to say today, but I do want to give a quick shout out to my Flutter New York City people. If you're local to New York City and you want to join further meetup groups, we have a bunch of folks from the community here, and you can sign up at flutter.nyc. So I hope to see you there. And now I'm going to pass it off to a very special panel with some of our Flutter founders, Abel, and a great investor. Yeah.
Thanks, Will. All right, very official. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, Darian. Let me introduce Darian Shirazi, who's here to join us and share his perspective. Darian started pretty early in his career at, so I think you were in high school at this time, right? When you started at Facebook, one of the first, very early engineers at Facebook, reporting directly to Zuckerberg. And I think a couple of years later, he left to join Berkeley, dropped out, started his own company, grew that to over 100 people, over 100 million in ARR. And he is now the general partner at Gradient Ventures, and he's also one of our first investors in our seed round from a couple of years ago, very, very early in our journey. So I'm so happy to be able to welcome him here today and interview him.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Abel.
All right, okay, so we're gonna kind of keep it open. He doesn't really know about some of the questions I'm asking, so because I want it to be a...
Just ask me the toughest questions.
That's all right, okay. So your journey from Facebook to Radius to Gradient, what were some of the key milestones and moments in that journey? It's pretty interesting, and so very curious to hear about the transitions and the key milestones.
Yeah, so I think that the best way to think about my career or any career of any entrepreneur is that every company is a mess. Every company is a total mess. Every project you start is a total mess. The good companies just sort of mask all the mess with growth, and they continue to iterate, continue to innovate. But every startup has a series of problems, and as the CEO founder, you sort of are managing chaos throughout everything that you do. One of the things that I really quickly admired Mark for, I think when I was at Facebook, I thought everything that you would build on the web would turn to gold. Like everything would suddenly just like add users. We had, any feature we launched at Facebook, millions of people used it the next day, and I was like, wow, this internet thing is great. And then very quickly I realized when I started my own company, it sort of humbled me because it made me realize how hard it is to build a company. And the practice of building a product versus building a company is a very different practice, right? There are some people that think that, oh, if I build an app, it's going to turn into a company. There's so much more that goes into turning that application into a business, into a company, hiring, building a management team. Those things are all really difficult. And for the most part, most companies fail. Like most businesses fail because of how much chaos is involved in building a company. And at Radius, we actually did have many Fortune 500 customers. I used to walk around this whole area, going from Amex to First Data to Goldman and we had multi-million-dollar contracts with a lot of these companies. It was very difficult, and I thought initially it was just about building a product and they would come, but very quickly I realized that it was a lot more than that, and I had to become an expert at selling, an expert at marketing, an expert at this, an expert at that, and before I knew it, it was a lot less about building a product and a lot more about building a company and a brand and like building a large customer base and working with customers directly. And I also realized that it was more, especially on the B2B side, about working with customers and caring and empathizing with customers' needs more than anything else. Like that was the primary goal of a B2B company. And B2C is similar, it's just you don't have that face-to-face interaction with the customer like you do in B2B. So very similar in that being obsessed with your customer, whether it's a user and it's millions of them or it's a large Fortune 500, empathizing with their needs and building a product to solve their problems is really just the key simple thing that every company has to do. And around that is a lot of disruption, chaos, and a lot of other things, like people wanting promotions when they're not ready for promotions, or hiring people and then you hire someone that's the wrong fit, or you know, let's say have a competitor that disrupts you. And so I think now, after having built a company and gone through a ton of crisis, and I had, I think, my fair share of crisis relative to the luck that I had when I joined Facebook, is that as an investor, I sort of have to pick founders that I think can survive, that are resilient, that like can fight every single battle and win. And because I do mostly seed and pre-seed investing, like I invest very early when it's maybe 3 people and an idea. In your case, you guys already had a lot of traction, but I think I was like one of the first people to get it right away. You have to develop a thesis, you have to develop conviction, and you have to be able to read people really well to know if their company gets hit by a bus, are they gonna die, or are they gonna survive? Are they gonna?
By the way, I think he's being generous. I think we had 5,000 signups on a wait list. Still, was, it's very early. I think we would invite maybe 50 or 100 users at a time, and maybe 3 or 4 would stick around. So it was not clear at all that. It was not clear to us that we were headed in the right direction. But yeah.
Well, also FlutterFlow is a specific situation because I had been looking at low-code, no-code app building for a long time. I had the luxury of being a developer and engineer myself, and I had built a number of applications in React Native. And also, I worked with Charlie Cheever, who founded Expo. So like I knew the ecosystem really well, and I had a very strong thesis that I didn't think React Native was good. And I thought that it was actually not performant. It had a lot of bugs. There was sort of a waning open source community. There was a community, but it was definitely not as good. And I felt like Google's support behind Flutter, the way Flutter was architected, would ultimately lead Flutter to win. And looks like that's the case. And so I had been looking for a Flutter low-code, no-code app builder. Everyone that I had seen in the space had been doing it based on React Native, mainly because at that time React Native was further ahead. And sort of the roles have reversed, and now I think Flutter is going to be the universal code platform, or is, that wins. And so the low-code, no-code app builder would have a tailwind for that. And so I was looking for this, and then you guys showed up, and then you were also incredibly good engineers, had a strong thesis and vision, and I was like, wow, I could invest and then I don't have to do anything. It's great. So, but no, I mean, I think the round of applause definitely is owed to both Abel and Alex. I mean, they've built an incredible company so far. The numbers are staggering, and the thesis has played out, which is really like great for me to see. It makes me feel great that like the thesis that I had is correct. But I think it has a lot more to do with the fact that you guys have just executed incredibly well and served your customer. I mean, we're only 3 years into this thing, 2 years into this thing, and
next month is actually our birthday, October 30th. So we'll have something to announce for that as well. Stay tuned.
Yeah, but I mean, look at this room. It's full of developers. Look at the live audience over YouTube internationally. Like, there's a community here. It's going to continue to grow, and it feels a lot like every single large developer community for every big product, sort of at the early days. And those things, just as long as you continue to improve it and continue to listen to the developers, like, it'll be big. So,
yeah, thank you.
I hope that evolution with FlutterFlow makes sense. So
we feel like there's just so much more to do, and I think as far as we've come, we see a lot of like requests coming in. And, it hits our Slack directly when you ask for feedback. So we see that and we're like, all right, we got to go faster. So let's switch gears though. We have a lot of, speaking of internationally as well, we have a lot of students. We have a student and education program. And when you were a student, you spent kind of 2 years and you decided, all right, I'm going to drop out and start a company. That's a bold move. What was your thinking at the time? What led you to make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back a little bit earlier. I owe a lot of this to my dad and also my mom, both of them. My father grew up in Iran. He came to the United States to go to college, and then he went to business school at Stanford, and one of his best friends was Scott McNeely and Vinod Khosla, and they asked him, hey, do you want to join and help start Stanford University Network? That's Sun Microsystems. The acronym is Stanford University Network. And my dad said, sure, this sounds awesome. My dad was going to work on the semiconductor side because they had to like acquire a lot of chips to like build a Unix system and actually get these machines off the ground. And then the revolution in Iran happened in 1979, and all his financial support from his family was cut off. And so he actually he was actually in the process of being deported by the INS back to Iran because he wasn't a US citizen. His younger brother was born in the US but living in Iran. They were worried that the hostage takers would take my uncle. So my dad had to fly his brother out here, raise him, put him through high school, like completely foreign country. And so my dad had to go get a job at Bain & Company and gave up the son opportunity. Had the revolution not happened, had he been able to actually, and Bain & Company, actually Mitt Romney, wrote a letter on his behalf to keep him from being deported. And he claimed asylum in the United States and stayed and became a US citizen, and he hasn't been home in over 40 years. I can't imagine how hard that is, but also on top of that, it kind of shaped how he thought about me. So I was born about 7 years later, and he didn't want me to have to not take risk. I mean, he would have made billions of dollars had he been part of Sun. And he had many other successes after that, so it worked out for him. But he also told me, take risk whenever you can. You have a good company idea, you don't need a degree. Like, you'll find a job, you'll be fine. You can always go back to Berkeley. You can always, go and get it. You're a programmer, you can always go get a job. So he was pushing me a lot to take risk, and I think that was something that most students and most children, especially of people that come to this country from humble means, like, they don't have that opportunity. Like, I was particularly lucky, and I think that given how software has evolved over the last 20 years, I would say if you can take risk, I would, because there's a higher likelihood it ends up being a lifestyle business than it fails. And that lifestyle business can serve you very well, right? Like, you could build an app on FlutterFlow and make $100,000 a month off of an app that gets into a niche audience. And that would be enough to sustain a team of 3 or 4 quite easily. And so your downside scenario is now very limited given the amount of developer tools and also the services and capabilities that are available. But I do think that low-code, no-code, transformer models, all of these things, and this is a longer conversation, actually are going to democratize the ability to earn money, the ability to be successful globally. Now, suddenly, someone can learn Flutter in any language because of a transformer model. You can translate the entire FlutterFlow product into any language globally because of transformer models. And that's going to only continue to be sort of a strong effect that will, I think, raise opportunity globally.
Yeah, and for context, the transformer model, that's what underlies all of these large language models, right? And some of the FlutterFlow AI stuff that you saw earlier, of course, what we use ultimately is a service that is built on top of that. All right, okay, so let's go to a different one.
Sure.
So
are all your questions invalid now? Did I make them all?
No, I'm trying to make it interesting. So you have an impressive portfolio. So you're investor in Lyft, Udemy, Carbon Health, FlutterFlow. Mm-hmm. What's your investment philosophy? So when you're kind of, you said you go for founders that you think can survive it when you're building early. Do you have some other things you look at specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of investments. I would say I do more than most investors that are out there, and I think I tend to lean more towards developer tools, developer platforms, because those are things that I love and I understand. I like things that allow people to build new experiences and new capabilities. My investment philosophy comes down to vetting the founding team. In the case of Udemy, which was a huge success, and I was one of the first shareholders there outside of the founders, I was floor mates with one of the founders at Berkeley, and I borrowed money from my dad to make that investment. And then I thought I was the best investor ever. And then after that, I made a bunch of bad investments. And it took me about 5 years to really realize what I wanted and what I was looking for. And my fundamental thesis comes down to really people first, and 3 components that are within people. The first one is I really look for people that I believe are trustworthy. I think that that is my number one thing, actually. I think that if a founder were to lie to me about something, that very quickly goes down a path where I don't want to work with them anymore. I just feel as though businesses are hard. There was one company today that I invested in that isn't working out, and we had a frank conversation about the founders are exhausted, they can't find product market fit, and we were very friendly about it, and we're coming up with opportunities for them to land the team, right? And so that happens. And so, or if you have a great great quarter and then you have a bad quarter, I just want to know. Like, I've been through this stuff. It's difficult. And so trustworthiness is number one for me. Number two is definitely resilience, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, is that there's going to be bad things that happen every day, and the magnitude of them will vary dramatically. And it'll get worse as the company gets bigger. Like, every business gets exponentially more difficult to run, especially if it's a hypergrowth software company, as you scale up. And so I really look for people that I believe will just roll with the punches. Like, you get hit, like you can continue, right? Like, one of the founders I really admire in New York City that we funded is a woman named Jacqueline Chen, who runs Benepass, which is like a benefits product for SMBs and middle market companies. She's been through, you know, a number of things that have been difficult. Like, it's a difficult market, and she is persevered, and I think she's an incredibly impressive founder. And so I look for that quality as a second one, and I think it's super important. And then the third one is some level of self-learning, or a word to describe this is autodidact, which is a word that I learned from my mom, and she'll be happy to say that I said that. But she always said that that was a very important human quality. I think it's extremely important for founders. And what it basically means is that you can learn any topic. You can learn anything, right? You're gonna have to be a CFO when you don't have one. You're gonna have to be a HR manager when you don't have one. And being able to solve and think through those problems is really key. The number of founders that fit all three, a single person that fit all three, is very rare. But typically, if you have 2 founders or 3 founders, they sort of have all 3 of those. The trustworthiness they need to have consistently across all founding team members, but the others can sort of be a partnership if they need to be. And that has been a very successful philosophy. If the founding team passes those key things for me at the pre-seed and seed, I think the next phase is going to be some level of understanding of what the product does. Do I believe it's a big market, or do I believe it's a beachhead market that can be expanded? And so those are the things that I really look for.
One thing I should add to this, very early when you were talking to a lot of investors, Darian was one of the few ones who actually went in, used the product, and tried it out. And so that, even for us, when we were trying to make a decision of who to go to, it was kind of clear to us. I want to switch gears.
You haven't asked me to write code yet, though. I'm not a very good engineer, though.
I don't think we had
anymore.
custom code at the time. So, so do you have any advice? So we have a lot of founders here as well watching live. Do you have advice for entrepreneurs that is like, you've already shared a lot, that's less common or counterintuitive, maybe something that's unexpected?
Yeah, so I think that it's important to realize very early on yourself as to whether you're building a venture backable company or not. Like, that is super important. I think there are a lot of founders right now that think that they have to raise money, right? You don't have to raise money. Like, you should, and you should only raise money if you think that your business can be worth billions of dollars. And so take the time to assess whether that's true. And if you believe it's true, that will shine through when you go raise money. And if it's not true, that's also okay. If you decide to build a lifestyle business that makes a certain amount of money every month and it's a great business, that's better than having a bunch of venture investors, because the venture investor mindset is really interesting. A lot of founders don't think deeply about what motivates their investors. In order for an investor in a venture capital firm to make money, that you really have to be like a $5 billion business, especially with the size of the venture funds that exist today. It's really hard for a venture capitalist to make money unless the outcome is like a $5 billion outcome. And so what ends up happening is that if you go and pitch, the venture investor may be thinking, wow, this can be $5 billion. You may be thinking in your mind, well, I would sell for 200 or 300, and you would very quickly have a misalignment of interests. And that misalignment of interest makes for a really difficult problem, because ultimately, if your investor wants a different outcome than you're willing to sign up for, that will end in a sad story. And most businesses don't need capital to get started. It's not a badge of honor to raise a ton of money at a high valuation. And most venture investors, what they'll do is they'll invest in a bunch of companies, and whichever one ends up being the $5 billion outcome, they'll spend the most time there, and they'll spend less time with you if your outcome is not going to be that great, or if they don't perceive your outcome to be great. So really make sure you know what you're signing up for if you go to raise money. But especially in software, the amount of capital that you need to prove whether it can be a big outcome or not is like very minimal. In fact, most of the cloud credits and software service credits that are available are enough for you to prove to yourself and to the world whether this is going to be a $5 billion outcome. So that's, I think, the piece of advice that I would strongly recommend. I don't think a lot of VCs say that because they want people to take their money. Whereas I don't want to deploy money into something where the founders are not willing to go for that long-term $5 billion outcome, because then we have misaligned incentives, and I hate that. Like I want to be as excited and work as hard for you as you're working for the company. Like that's my goal.
That ties back to the trustworthiness that you're talking
Exactly.
about. You want that on the other side as well.
Exactly. If we both go in eyes open and say, hey, we think this can be 5 billion, and then we're wrong, that's different. That's fine. And we have an honest conversation about it. We try to find an outcome that works for everybody. So I think it's like, don't oversell, just, and be honest with yourself as to how big you think your business can be. And try to assess that before you go out and raise money. Because a lot of VCs will give you capital if you show that confidence and you believe that the company can be big. And then you may realize that, oh, in order for me to make money off my own company, I have to realize a significant outcome as well, and that may not be possible anymore. So you quickly get into this sticky situation that I don't think is where you want to be.
An interesting fact I want to share here is this is one of the things that has inspired us for the fundraising journey we've had. I believe Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google combined have raised less than $50 million. So inflation adjusted is probably a factor of 2 to 3 higher. But still, these are like, the generational companies that have been formed with very little capital. And today, I think the mindset founders have is, I need to raise a lot, go ahead and raise more, instead of, am I really building a business that customers care about?
Yeah, like I think a good example of a company that's going public this month is Klaviyo. Disclaimer, I am a small investor in the company, but the business is doing about 600 million of annual revenue. It's an SMS text marketing for e-commerce and email marketing automation for e-commerce. And the company only burned 15 million to get to 600 million of revenue. That's the story you want to tell. Like that's a great story. The founder owns 40% of the company, right? Like that's amazing. And I think we had a period of time when interest rates were at 0%, where the badge of honor was how much money did you raise. And I think we're now entering a more sobering time where it's like, okay, how good is your business? How sales efficient is it? Can it be profitable? And how little capital did you raise to get to a good outcome?
Okay, now this is the last question before we do a rapid fire session. I don't think I told you about this, but we're going to do rapid fire afterwards.
Now I'm scared.
But this is not rapid fire. What emerging tech are you most excited about? And AI is, of course, huge, so not an option for now. Just to see outside of AI, what emerging tech are you excited about? Because of course that's everywhere.
Do you mean like, can I say AI for other verticals, or like where do you like? I mean, I focus almost entirely on AI software, and I don't know anything about stuff outside of software, so I'm not.
So within AI, what do you maybe specific vertical within AI then?
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in healthcare. I think in how AI is going to disrupt healthcare. I'm not investing in that ecosystem actively because I don't understand it as well as I do like normal software that's outside of healthcare. But for the most part, I think that it's going to uplift a lot of things in the world, right? Like I think health insurance navigation is like a massive market, right? Like if you go to a doctor, how much is your health insurance going to cover? Or can you get prior authorization to get a certain medication? Those are all going to be solved with LLMs. Or are we going to have drug discovery? Those drug discovery automation through LLMs is also super interesting. I saw a company called Evolutionary Scale. We looked very closely at it. They just raised 40 million, and they're basically building an LLM for drug discovery. Those are going to change human outcomes for the better. And I think we will continue to see, new proteins come out because LLMs will be able to discover it. Once we're able to ingest clinical trial data into LLMs, that's going to be even more interesting. So I don't know. For me, I just feel as though humankind is going to enter an era where we'll be able to solve like almost every disease. We'll be able to solve almost every ailment because we have an LLM at our disposal that can combine drugs, combine certain treatments to lead to outcomes that we want. That's exciting to me as a person. As an actively investing outside of AI, I'm particularly interested in space tech. I've tried to amass as much SpaceX stock as I can get my hands on over the years, and I think it's going to be a very big company. I also think the Starlink business is kind of the way to sort of drive more knowledge across the world, especially to countries and economies where there isn't as much access to internet. So those are the areas where I'm particularly excited outside of AI that really make me think that humanity is headed towards a new era where we're thinking about innovation primarily. We're no longer fighting wars, hopefully, and we're more focused on just bettering humankind for everyone over time. I'm actually a strong optimist about the future, especially a world with LLMs and how that's changed how we absorb knowledge and we communicate, how we allow for people that speak different languages to learn any topic that maybe has been researched and content has been produced in English, but because of the way transformers work, anyone can learn anything. So I actually think the next 20 years are going to be a really, really strong tailwind for growing the economies of countries that necessarily couldn't before, growing the careers of people that couldn't necessarily before. So yeah, I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, this is something that personally is also very meaningful for me because I was born and raised in Ethiopia. I started writing code at a relatively young age, but there was not that many resources available. This is late 90s, early 2000s, and reading books, whatever I can find. Early day, Google search was what I used. So I think now that having the ability to have offline models, especially that you can make available, that teaches people, to this day, maybe I would read a Financial Times article about something, and I don't understand this concept. I can just query a large language model. And maybe double check. You want to you don't want to necessarily assume that it works perfectly now. I don't think we're too far from it being much more reliable, but it really gets you a lot of the concepts easily, and then you can always just read a little bit more about it because now you don't have to search different sources of information and try to find exactly where to look, and it gives you the baseline, which is very interesting.
It's like Cliff Notes for everything. It's great. It's great. I mean, come on. You didn't want to do your summer reading. You read Cliff Notes and you absorbed the theme of a book, right? Like now you have Cliff Notes for almost every topic. It's fantastic. I mean, and that's gonna, I think, allow people that are not necessarily that have sort of formed opinions off of limited information to actually challenge those opinions in their own minds by having some level of summarization around content. And to me, that is also a big change because I'd say that education globally, or at least in the United States, has been eroded over the past 20 years, not improved. And so I'm optimistic that LLMs will change that because I feel as though digital, devices, phones, they've made us allowed to focus less. This is the remedy to the ailment of not paying attention enough to the details of topics. So I don't know, I'm pretty optimistic.
Same here. All right, rapid fire. And audience, I want you to help me out. If it's taking too long to answer questions, keep them accountable. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Favorite place visited?
Favorite place visited? Wow, that's a good question. For me, I mean, my favorite city in the world is Berlin. Because I find that it has an incredible mix of culture, it's incredibly diverse. It is a city that is deeply rooted in history, and I go there quite often because I find as though it's unlike anywhere else in the world. You have an incredible confluence of art, technology, and government in one city that has been sort of split in two for so long, and the division between the two sides of the city is still you can see it. You can see how it has evolved. And also it's a place where I feel as though people are accepted for who they are, more so than anywhere in the world, in my mind, is that you can be any person and you will be accepted. You can, make friends, you can get to know people. It's a lot like New York in that way, but I would say even more so. And I'm a big fan that, if you have a lot of diverse thoughts, a lot of different people that are thinking about things, you ultimately have a better outcome than if you have a homogenous group of people thinking about something.
Which artist can you listen to on repeat?
Which artist can I listen to on repeat? Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I'm a deep house EDM kind of person, which is a little bit odd, I know. So Tale of Us is one of my favorite DJs, I'd say, and I can listen to a 5-hour set, and that's usually my day when I'm not on calls. So yeah.
Last book you loved?
Last book I loved. There's so many books that I could say are. That's a really good question. I mean, I would say definitely in the past 10 years, Sapiens is the one, but every VC says that, so I kind of sound lame. But it's to me really gets down to the human component, and I find that it is really at the core tells you what the motivations of people are, and I think it's mostly important because it tells you a lot about how brand building is so important. Is that humans are the only sort of or the only sort of animal that can create a motif and get people to follow that, right? So like we're building a community right here, and I think it applies a lot to software companies. So for me, it's like still a very important book.
This funny story about that. I took the Coursera class that Yuval Harari did. So before Sapiens came out, I remember watching these lectures thinking, wow, this is such good content. And it's very, deep cut moment.
I would say, okay, the one that I really love now that comes to mind is Born a Crime, Trevor Noah. I mean, it's like hilarious. I really like him. So from like what I associate with, but the VC answer would be Sapiens.
Favorite game?
Favorite game? Oh, Civilization. Yeah, for sure. I've been a Civilization fan forever. I used to play Civilization 2 where you had to like switch floppies. Like you'd have to like, they'd be like, oh, like suddenly some civilization would show up and want to meet you, and you'd be like, please insert floppy disk 5 in order to like play the script for that specific civilization. So, but now I play Civ 7 usually on iPad if I have free time. But since I've had a kid, it's tough to play games.
All right, favorite recent investment?
Oof, favorite recent investment. Well, Flutter Flow is not recent. Flutter Flow is not recent, guys.
Yeah. I was trying to make it. All right, okay, not recent. I'm kidding. Yeah.
Favorite recent investment. It's going to get announced on Thursday. It's very cool. It's a New York-based company. It's an LLM orchestration platform that I'm very excited about, and I think it will give LangChain a run for its money.
Cool. I think we're going to open it up for audience questions now. I think we have mics available, and we can just, we wait for, raise your hands if you're interested in any questions. All right, we have one here.
Cool. Thanks so much for the conversation. Really interesting. From your perspective, I think what would be really interesting to hear is maybe FlutterFlow team, you guys can like close your ears. But from your perspective as an investor, where do you see FlutterFlow like relative to your other portfolio companies? Like if you were to say like, all right, all of my portfolio companies are starting a race at the same place, like where is FlutterFlow in terms of like their just like speed out the gate and kind of momentum so far?
Yeah, so I don't compare companies typically. I mean, I think of companies as very different in their evolutions. I would say that FlutterFlow's usage, revenue, and all metrics are like stellar. They're unbelievable. And they have beat like every metric that they ever like put a flag in the sand for. Like they have beat their plan over and over again. They've spent less money than they said they would spend. Like this team has executed to perfection. I will say that the team's size relative to the metrics is smaller than some of my other companies in terms of the number of employees. That could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing, depends on the company. I don't know, but I would say it's definitely like top 1% of the investments I've made at this stage.
Cool.
Now, that's thanks to all of you, who are building on FlutterFlow. So thank you. We have another question over here. I think Ben.
It'd be cool to know when you ask a question like what you do. I'd love to know. Yeah. Like what you've built with FlutterFlow, or if you're or your interest. Yeah.
Hey, Ben Love. I'm the unofficial web stream
mod, right?
person.
Basically,
mod.
Oh, nice.
So I have 2 questions from online that I was going to ask, but before I'll answer your question.
Okay.
In the point of sale terminal business, so we're taking FlutterFlow, hopefully with AI Gen, and bringing it to the world of point of sale systems. So you can accept payments anywhere, and anyone can make anything on point of sale. All right, 2 questions. First one, 3rd birthday coming up, October 30th. What does this look like 3 years from now?
I mean, you have to ask him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for FlutterFlow. So the picture I showed earlier with the laptop on a beach, so if all of you here, who use FlutterFlow, you know that we do our best. I think we're very close, but it's still, you run into issues. It's still not a smooth process. And we want to make it much better, and do not just the kind of the functionality we have now for development, but also help you more. So for example, Render can develop and deploy directly from FlutterFlow, but if you need to, let's say, improve like after you've deployed your app and you see some results, because it's not just about building and releasing, right? You've released your app and you want to experiment on, is this working? Should I ship slightly different features from here to there? There's a lot of stuff we can do there. And of course, this is kind of stuff that we keep really close to the sleeve in terms of our future plans, because we don't want to kind of make an announcement, especially because when it comes to the future in this day and age, it's like, the QuickTime movie editors, you can have like the time scale thing you can adjust. Everything has kind of shrunk now. What happens in a year is just incredible. Like if you asked us a year and a half ago that we're going to do AI Gen, we'd say, no, you're crazy. Like that's not possible. But technology moves so quickly that we're not sure exactly where we're going to be. We have some ideas of where we want to end up, ultimately so that we make it a much, much happier place to come and build and focus on your products and deliver the products your users want. So that's where we want to be. Exactly how, I don't know.
You should be more cryptic, right? And a question for you. Are you watching FlutterFlow, the companies that are building with FlutterFlow for potential future investments?
I mean, I've thought about it. I do question whether that's good for FlutterFlow. I mean, I've thought about it multiple times about like, hey, Abel, can you send me a lead list of like companies I should fund? I don't love doing that because I don't want there to be any question from a developer on FlutterFlow that their information is being used for some other purpose. I think it's a bad precedent to set. I don't, we see so many great companies to fund. We don't need that many more to come our way. And I feel like I have a close enough relationship with Abel, he'll tell me. He'll just be like, hey, you should look at these 3. But I don't want to have like a feed that would suddenly.
Yeah, maybe what we'll do is we'll do a hackathon or a competition where founders kind of compete on submitting different apps, and then the top 5 get to pitch directly to Darian if you're interested.
I love that.
Yeah, let's do that later this year. Yeah. Great question. Okay, we have, I think that one went up first, but then Aleem afterwards.
Hello. Marlon from Nuclea. We're from Mexico. We want to congratulate you or myself about the presentation. I really think the way FlutterFlow operates, it's like very efficient, and my question has to do with that, because you said you work fully remote, and what's like your opinion about that as a VC, having a team that doesn't because comparing to X or Twitter, it was like, no, we have to take the whole team again to a place, no? But you did it differently, and you are like being so efficient. So, yeah, what's your perspective as a VC?
Do you want me to go first? And I would love to hear your.
Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're fully remote today. We have a very small office space in Mountain View, where people can come in if they want there. But in terms of even just like with the team, our philosophy is, we bring on people who are very passionate about what we're trying to do, and are, as much as we can, we try to make it so that we're hiring the best people that that want to join us. And when you have that combination, when you care about your users, you care about the problem you're solving, and you're talented, that's a great combination. And that's the team we have, and we're super lucky to be able to have. And some of it we didn't control. So we had people who joined us who found FlutterFlow and talked to us and. Wow, this is amazing. How did, this person just is interested in joining FlutterFlow, and some of it we couldn't control. But when you have that kind of team, whether it's in person or remote, I think you can make it work because people are driven. But we do think it's nice to be able to get together in person. So we try to do about 4 times a year, we try to get everybody kind of get together, whether it's potentially regional because we're pretty global, or everybody in one location. But yeah, we'd love to hear what you think, Darren.
Yeah, I think it works when the team is really tiny. Like under 50, under 70 employees, and when you're able to, as the founders, know everybody on your team and able to inspire them directly. And I've seen it sort of break once you get to about 50 to 70 employees. And I think also Abel and Alex, they know you guys have coded together forever. You know what each other are capable of. You work really well together. A lot of the initial product and the architectural decisions, the design decisions, they were all the two of you, and you work really well together, which I think is a key thing. But I think that, and I've seen this happen really with a lot of companies, is that either it works really well in the early days because the teams work together, they trust each other, and they're focused on building more than anything else. But once you get to that certain size of 50 to 70, I try to encourage companies to have a critical team in one city or at least 2 cities, and where people come in 2 to 3 days a week, because it's really hard to get people to continue to be motivated by a vision and mission when it's not theirs and they're not part of that initial founding team. And so when you start to see remote teams lack in productivity as you layer on more engineers and more people or more salespeople in the company that aren't as close to the core mission and vision from the beginning. I've seen it sometimes work. There are some companies we have that are 500 employees that are fully remote. But I do think that that's a special case. That's the exception, not the rule. So I would almost recommend that try to make it work in the early days for cost reasons and for convenience reasons. But then as you get to a certain size, really start to formalize and bring people in person.
Cool. I think we have another one. Aleem here came up next. Yeah. No, you're getting it. Oh.
Hello. Hey, what's going on? Thank you so much. My name is Aleem from Atlanta. I'm the founder of Ambitious Labs. Moses and I run a pre-seed startup accelerator for non-technical entrepreneurs. So we coach them on how to bring their ideas to life using FlutterFlow. And a big part of our thesis to them is, if you're a non-technical entrepreneur and you can use a no-code, low-code tool like FlutterFlow to bring your idea to life, prove that there is a need, prove your hypothesis, and then you go to a VC, and then you go to an investor and take that proven idea, they're much more likely to fund you, rather than just come with a pitch deck and a dream. If a VC can see what you do with $100 and a couple weeks of time, they're going to be like, wow, you did this with $100? Imagine what you could do with 200K. Is that true? Am I right in coaching my students on that?
No, I don't think so, because what makes a company successful is, to me, I think there are some investors that are that financially driven and that are saying like, oh, I put $1 in and I get out $5, and like, and then can I scale it and put more money in? I think for me, it's much more about, do I believe that the team wants to build a massive outcome company, and do I believe I can obtain the ownership necessary to make it worth my while, to make it worth, meaning that if they realize that outcome, that it'll get there. And also, do I believe that the team can inspire a large group of people to follow them, right? That's not normal. And that's not something that everybody has. And so what leads to a successful company really comes down to the founders, really comes down to their ability to lead, to set direction, and to like sort of persevere through some of the biggest challenges. I don't think at the seed stage it's really about dollars in, dollars out. When you get to Series C, Series D, you get closer to IPO, then it is, right? Because you know the customer, you have product market fit, you've seen a reasonable amount of scale, you have a number of moats in the business, and you just really need capital to scale it up. That's why I don't do late stage investing, because I think that's kind of boring, right? Is that the pre-seed and seed stages and even Series A is people evaluation.
If I may, one more follow-up to that.
Sure.
Just to not discourage any like solopreneurs and non-technical founders out there, I think founder-investor fit is also really important to talk about. Like
totally,
a VC like you is probably not the best fit for many of my students. But an angel office or a family office or some rich uncle or auntie or family member is a great investor for that person.
100%. I think that I'm talking specifically about venture capital as a class, but like angel investors, they're psyched with 4 or 5x return. Right? They don't want 1,000x, right? Like, but for a venture capital to meet their hurdle, like pay back their fund, it has to be like 1,000x. And that's I think the misaligned incentives, which is why your first round, I think it's really a good idea to take angel money. Don't take institutional capital unless you find an investor and the company is clearly poised for a big outcome. Like I was willing to take the bet on FlutterFlow because I believed it would be huge, but I think most companies should take angel rounds. I mean, think about some of the best companies that are out there. Google took its first 100K from Andy Bechtolsheim, like before institutional capital. Facebook took angel money from Peter Thiel. They didn't take it from a fund as their first round. Those are the best kinds of rounds because it gives you the freedom to sort of determine, hey, is this thing going to be big or is it going to be big enough? right? And so like that's the question that you can answer with less capital from an angel network or a family office or something like that, where their return hurdle is very different than what someone like me would have.
And Jeff Bezos, to add to that, I think it's self-funded plus his parents invested in Amazon as well. I think we have time for maybe 2 questions at most. Okay, so Will has already handed a mic over there.
Thank you. Hey, yeah, my name is Sardor. I'm the co-owner and partner at Jafton.com. We are a software and mobile app development company, heavily using Flutter Flow in the last year. Been one of the best decisions. Thanks, Abel and the team. My question is around the emergence of generative AI and how that's going to affect software development and make it. We're already seeing a lot of these apps becoming a commodity. So let's say you invest in a company that at a time had an impressive tech or product that took 3 years to build. Now with generative AI platforms like Flutter Flow, that can be built much quicker in weeks, which brings in more competition, right? How do you look at that? How do you look at overall software and products becoming a commodity development-wise? And is that a threat to your investments?
Yeah, so I see it as it's only accelerated from what was already happening, right? Like Flutter Flow is basically made it such that you don't really need to touch much code if you're building a simple application, right? Like now GPT-4 integration is basically allowing for the UI to not require a designer. So you're only accelerating the time to sort of build it, time to launch. But this was already happening anyway without AI. Retool is a good example, right? Stacker is a good example. React Native, even the emergence of the universal frameworks is an example. Flutter Flow is an example, and now AI integration into these app builders is also an example of accelerating time to launch dramatically for a lot of these internal use cases. But I think the flip side for that is that the TAM for internal automation within companies and for consumer apps is, in my mind, trillions of dollars. So, the thinking is that there were a class of applications and automations that previously no one hired a mobile development shop for because the cost of developing that internal tool or that consumer automation or that enterprise automation was too high, so they just did it manually with people. I think that now you're going to see the TAM sort of expand for you because your cost will go down and the cost to the customer will go down. So we'll just have more automations and more apps that are getting developed by AI. I actually think, if anything, it doesn't increase your competition, it increases the number of customers you can serve and the number of use cases you can serve.
I think if I can add to that, I think there's a lesson in history here that's I draw comparisons to, and that's for personal computing itself. This industry, I think the first large-scale application was for the government, for the US government, right? For the Manhattan Project, I believe, was the first von Neumann machine being actually applied. And the amount of money required to run algorithms was immense. And going from that, you had mainframes that companies would buy, and they could only use it for the most expensive application. So maybe it's tech research, or maybe they run simulations. And then it started becoming, now you have terminals to the mainframes, and now you can have slightly more applications than you can use. So you can run HR, some internal operational stuff. And then as personal computing became smaller, like more and more accessible, now all of a sudden you had more and more applications that people can leverage. I think that same kind of, and now we're at devices level with our watches and our phones, right? I think that same thing that has happened in hardware is going to happen for software. Because now if I wanted an application with just me and my partner that does something just special for us, I can potentially make that happen, right? So this is kind of in the future. The amount of the demand for applications out there, I think far outweigh this current supply. And that's what we're betting on, that we can help accelerate that adoption of technology globally. Because imagine a small business in Colombia, it's a hair salon potentially, who want, they have customers, they maybe want to have rewards programs or push notifications for their users. Today, it's very hard for them to run their business with maybe a small margin and also develop applications for their customers. But we want to change that. So I hope that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, just real quick follow-up. Do you think it's going to be more self-serve or agencies working on this?
If you look at the same thing in the personal computing side, I think you still have both, right? You're going to have the large companies that are building very complex applications, and I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the future? But as far as we can tell, very, very complicated things still need people in there, and I think that's, it's going to be a case. But you'll end up with a varying level of complexity and needs, and you have like niches that kind of form. But you'll have to kind of wait and see. It's very silly to try to predict the future, I think, so I'm not going to dare to do that. Okay, maybe one last one. So we have to get out of here in the next 15, 30 minutes, so all right.
Hey, my name's Evan from Marcata. I'm the co-founder. We're working on building an AI platform which generates connections between businesses and influencers for influencer marketing. And so my question is, how can early stage businesses and startups who are bootstrapping without funding work on getting speed to market in today's economy?
I mean, I think FlutterFlow is a good example of that, right? Is that building, there's so many tools that are off the shelf and they're constantly being developed. I mean, you now have Supabase, you now have FlutterFlow. I mean, these tools are incredible, right? I mean, I think back to 2005, if we had a web server that went down, we'd have to go to the colo. Like, I don't think anyone in this room has anyone been to a colo? Okay, maybe a few in the past year. Nobody. And like some people are saying, what's that, right? So I think that we are, and we had to go replace a hard drive or like restart a machine. That's gone. That whole era is gone. I think you're going to start to see that a lot of the sysadmin work will be the first thing to sort of disappear. It already is. I think the next phase will be that building simple applications will be very, very easy for one person that maybe isn't a developer. And I think embracing these tools is really key. You don't build a successful business because you master the technology behind it necessarily, unless you're in a research company or you're building in the next generation LLM. But most businesses, you get rewarded by serving your customer. And so it doesn't matter how you do that, as long as it's a software product and it's not services, and you're going to get a good multiple on that business. And so I think embracing a lot of these tools are key.
Thank you.
I just want to say a huge thank you for Darren. He was one of the first believers in FlutterFlow. I remember actually we had, right after our YC batch, we did a conversation with a potential investor. And it was actually, we were ex-Googlers, and it was the Zoogler fund we talked to. And they were already kind of believers that had done some research. And we got a check immediately. And we're like, wow, fundraising is easy. And we went and we got no, so many no's before we got the first big check offer from Darren. So appreciate you believing in us very early and supporting us, and for being here and doing this interview. So
it's fun. Next year, how big do you think the audience is going to be? And are you going to invite me to talk next year?
Yeah, I can't predict the future. I'm just kidding. Well,
it seems like you can. Like every number
this one we control.
There, you beat it.
Yeah, this one I think we control. So I hope we can have 2-3 times as many people in person, because maybe even bigger. We are very cash flow sensitive when we make these decisions. No, I'm kidding. Hopefully we can have 10 times as much, right? The way we're growing, the way we're getting supporters, I think we can do a lot more. And of course, I think we'll have multiple tracks, hopefully even. So yeah, thank you so much for being here, for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Online also. I think we'll still have a lot of the team here sticking around. We have the space for another 20 minutes or so, 20, 30 minutes before we have to start kind of cleaning up. So we'd love to talk to you here in person. Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Thanks,
Yeah, thanks.